Can you tell us about the nature of the deal, the MOU, and a little bit more about the 4 key pillars that are underpinning this MOU?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Ethiopia is the second biggest country in population in sub-Saharan Africa, has always been part of our strategy. So we had great engagements over the last 2 years, specifically now with the new government that came in, new prime minister, new president, and we could feel that the time is right to move on. So what we've agreed on basically with the government is to jointly put a plan together to create an automotive industry. Now, knowing that Ethiopia is sort of far behind with automotive so far, there's a need to look into various ways of make it happen. And what we have done with them is, like we said, we got to base it on 4 pillars. First pillar, obviously, automotive assembly or production, vehicle production. That's what everybody wants to do, certainly. But we said we also want to look into component manufacturing because, they've got a very strong textile industry already. So why not looking into automotive components that are sort of textile-based? Seat covers, for example, or headliners, So we want to look into that because that's where really the job growth ultimately lies. Then we want to look into mobility, similar to what we do in Rwanda, meaning that you want to offer not only new vehicles to be bought, new and used vehicles and sales and service, but also app-based mobility like ride-hailing and car sharing. And the 4th one is training and skills development. That always goes hand in hand with our activities.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, can you tell us about the timelines for this?
Yeah, so we have put a tough timeline together with the government in which we work in these packages to determine the ultimate size of the investment, the ultimate size of the factory, the workers, and so on. So right now, it all angles on the question of demand. Because now, as you know, in Ethiopia, new car sales are hovering maybe around the 5,000 vehicles per year. In a country that's double the size of South Africa, that's obviously far underplaying the potential. So how do you open this potential, however, means with automotive policy, restricting the importation of used cars, second-hand vehicles. You want to maybe look into bringing newer vehicles onto the streets by cash for clunkers, preferential procurement, and mobility. That's also one of the demand-enhancing mechanisms because you all of a sudden get a lot more people into cars that get utilized and need to be replaced. So at the moment, everything is like tough project work that we want to conclude by the middle of the year. And then, depending on what the outcome is, can be anything from a 20-30 million US dollar investment to 700 million. So it all depends on what the outcome of the joint project is. But the government has identified us as a key partner in this journey.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, you just mentioned now that Ethiopia has some of the lowest car ownership numbers. How do you plan to stimulate demand for your vehicles?
Yeah. Look, this is a little bit like that funny joke about the guy that comes to Africa, sees people without shoes and says, well, there's no market to sell shoes. People don't wear shoes. Meanwhile, it's a huge potential, right? So we've been looking at it from a different angle. Even though there's no new car demand at the moment, there is a huge demand for mobility. There are hundreds of thousands and probably millions of people who need to go from A to B and have certain disposable income that they can spend in that. So we believe that this can be one of the demand triggers into an automotive demand. Okay, so mobility is one of the ones, and just for example, in a city like Kigali, where we started the mobility activities, we have about 800 vehicles that offer mobility there. And these vehicles need to be built in the country. They need to be then put on the street, but they're also off the street as new cars within a year or two and need to be replaced with new ones. So you continuously have a demand. Now, if you project this onto a city like Addis, you can say this is probably 10-fold or even 15-fold the size of Kigali. So we believe mobility will create demand. Obviously, restricting the importation of second-hand vehicles creates an automatic demand, but also stuff like consumer financing And there's literally no consumer financing at the moment. And when you look at other more developed markets like South Africa even, about 80% of our new car sales are actually financed.
Now, what do you anticipate the plant capacity being annually?
Look, we don't know. It could be anything. From now, if there's various scenarios, if we go the low road and everything sort of stays what it is, and we're just getting active, it could be a 10,000 car capacity, which is pretty easy and can be realized within a year. However, we believe that there's significantly more potential. 110 million population country could have, in our terms, far more than 1 million new vehicles per year. That would be probably about 15 large-scale factories that could operate in this country. So large-scale meaning 100 to 150,000 vehicles per year.
And what does this mean for Ethiopia's labor force? How are you going to be upskilling them, and as well as the contribution to the Ethiopian community at large?
There's a lot of activity already in the country. In the recent visit, we went by the training centers and had a look. There's German government is investing quite heavily through their GIZ arm into training and education, dual apprenticeship. We would enhance this significantly in terms of automotive production, engineering, and that. But I think they've already got a pretty good base that they are working on. So, but we need it anyway. So for us, it's always better if you don't have people who think they are ready for production, and we can have the chance to train people up properly and make them part of our family.
And finally, can you expand on the plan to build an automotive hub in West Africa?
Yeah, so West Africa, specifically Ghana and Nigeria, are also obviously natural contenders for an automotive industry. And ECOWAS, in the larger sense, has a massive population and a demand for huge youth employment. So we believe with good collaboration between the countries, especially in the West, one could create an auto industry cluster that could serve the West African countries. So we're working with Nigeria and with Ghana on plans like that. But we're also working on the East Coast with the likes of Kenya, Rwanda, and so on an East Coast idea. And ultimately, what needs to happen and what the big plan is to have, Ghana, Nigeria on the West Coast, Kenya, Rwanda, and the EAC on the East Coast, then Northeast Ethiopia and surrounding, and South Africa plus surrounding countries connected in automotive.